Guys, so today we are going to take a look at some of the events in the post-Andrew Jackson world in terms of United States history. We are going to be looking kind of how we complete the map of the United States. Now, as we know, up until this point, we have been looking at Andrew Jackson as a class and him as our president, knowing him and being president of the 1830s. So up until this point, we have the Louisiana Purchase. We have a bunch of new territory, but there's still kind of a wall blocking us off from completing the map as we know it today. You know, all the way from Pacific Ocean to Atlantic Ocean. We have to still get California, Nevada, Utah, Oregon, Texas. All these big pieces to allow us to move forward with expansion. Now, I believe Coach Crouch is going to be talking to you guys about expansion and Manifest Destiny in another lesson. Today, I want to focus on how we get the land to expand. Now, we're Americans. We don't do anything peacefully. That's kind of our bravado. It's kind of what we wear on our chest. We will take what we want. Now, we're going to fight a lot. And we're going to take some things, and blood will be shed in order for us to complete the map of the continental United States. Now, that continental United States, that is this main part of America that, we live in. We live in the continental United States. It's going to stretch from Atlantic to Pacific. It's not going to include places like Alaska or Hawaii or anything like that. It's just going to be those main body of 48 states that we... when they show the United States, it's that big, massive section of the map. And we're going to look at how that is completed. Now, there's a couple things that we're going to need to discuss, and you guys are going to need to pay attention to and know as we go through this. This is going to take place between 3 different presidencies, really. We're going to be looking towards the tail end of Andrew Jackson's presidency, at the presidency of James K. Polk, and of Zachary Taylor. And they're going to kind of work in unison to complete the map of the United States. Alright, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about Indian removal and tie that into where we are going. We're going to talk about the Alamo, which leads us to the annexation of Texas and the Mexican-American War. So we've got a couple big things we're going to cover as we move forward with this lesson. And all of these things I want you to make special note of is they are going to build towards the American Civil War. Now, most of us know American Civil War, the biggest thing that is attached to that is slavery. So all of these things are going to have an effect on how slavery is in the United States. Now, if you remember back to my earlier video on the Missouri Compromise and the Compromise of 1850, slavery is going to be at play, especially when we're talking about annexing a new state, that state being Texas. And not only are we going to get Texas, we're going to get a bunch of other properties in the Mexican cession that, well, it's going to push the slavery issue even farther, because we're going to all of a sudden, we're going to have Arizona, Utah, Colorado, Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, and it's going to become a mess. Now, first word I keep saying a lot is annexation. I'm going to say this now, and I'll probably come back to it again later. Annexation is when we are going to allow a state to come into our union. Now, Texas, the Lone Star Republic, was once its own country. And we are going to annex them, and we're going to go and help. We're going to fight a war on their behalf, and we're going to allow them and annex that country and bring it into our union. It's a little bit different than creating like a territory and then a territory applying for statehood, because territories are never countries. They're just organizations of land that get brought into the union. Texas was a state, or was a nation. It was its own country. And we're going to take and bring that entire country into the union. And that's what the process of annexation is. But first, let's take it all the way back, and let's talk Indian removal, and let's talk little bit about Andrew Jackson and how that process influences this moving forward more. All right, guys, so what you should be seeing now is a map of the United States that maps out the different routes that were used for Indian removal. As you can see, we're going to have the five civilized tribes, as you guys should know by now, the Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, Cherokee, and the Seminole. They are going to be removed from their land based off of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which is passed by Congress. They're going to try to fight it in the Supreme Court, but it's not going to be successful, and then they are going to be forced at gunpoint, knife point, bayonet point, however you want to think about it. It's going to be a violent removal of these people from their ancestral lands and where they have set up their life and have been living for as long as they know and as long as they can remember. What the big key with this is you had a lot of these tribes living in that southern part of the United States, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and that's really, really good farmland. Really, really good farmland. It's, prime for cotton growing. And with American settlers wanting to expand and the population increase, there needed to be more land to put the American citizens. And they're going to remove these Indians and allow the American settlers to start flooding westward along that bottom side in the south, opening up new farmland. This new farmland is going to help increase the economy. It's going to help bring a want for more to the American people. Now, this is not going to be a kind march. It is known as the Trail of Tears. It's a 1,000-mile march where many were done barefoot in the middle of winter. Lots and lots of Cherokee and other natives are going to die in their removal to these reservations in the Oklahoma Territory. As it shows on this map, it is labeled the Indian Territory. But I guess there's no really but. This is really atrocious. This is a really bad thing that we kind of did in the name of progress, in the name of expansion of our country. Now, this is going to push us up, as you can see in that bottom little corner there, to the Republic of Texas. Now, that's where we're going to be moving into next, is we're going to look at something that you guys probably all have heard of, the Alamo.
Hold on. Hey! I know there are a lot of details in history that are up for grabs, like what Jim Bowie was thinking about right before he died, or whether Davy Crockett surrendered, but these are the undisputed facts. In March of 1836, nearly 200 men volunteered so that Texas could become a republic. Even though they were undertrained, outnumbered, and completely surrounded, they fought on and died for what they believed in. And I've always found that inspiring.
All right, guys. So like my good friend Hank Hill just said there, the Alamo is a highly inspiring event. It is one of those things that Texans take with way too much pride. As you get older and start intermingling with people from Texas, well, they're going to show their pride because that's just what they do. Texans are like that. Now, the Alamo itself is a single battle that is defending the Alamo Mission in San Antonio. It is part of a much larger conflict for Texas independence, which is going to start in 1835. Now, prior to that, it was owned by Mexico. And Mexico had allowed American settlers to come into Texas in order to farm, settle, develop the land. They saw it as a serious economic benefit, and they were going to make a lot of money off of all these Americans coming in and settling and developing Texas for them. What they didn't count on was that when Americans decide to move into Texas, they're going to just move into Texas. And then they're going to outnumber the Mexican government, the Mexicans. The Mexican government is not going to really like them because, well, they outnumber them. And they're not going to listen to what the Mexican government says or what the Mexican government wants. And that's going to create a violent conflict between those American settlers in Texas and the government of Mexico. this is going to end up coming to a boiling point, and the Alamo is going to be this point of a last stand of these American settlers against the Mexican government, and it's not going to go well. Most of the people at the Alamo are going to die. General Santa Anna, leader of the Mexican military at the time, is going to allow women and children to survive. And the express point of him allowing them to do that is he's hoping that they will go back to the United States and warn people not to settle in Texas anymore. Well, Americans are stubborn. That does not work, and we continue to pour into Mexico until a treaty is signed granting Texas its independence from Mexico. Now, it's going to be about 10 years of trying for Texas to be a successful republic in its own right, and then they're going to start petitioning the United States to annex them and become a state. And this is going to become a even bigger problem because it's going to lead to a dispute about the border of Texas and what actually is Texas, what's Mexico, and this is going to lead to the conflict known as the Mexican-American War. All right, so you might be asking yourself, who is this old white guy on the screen? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is John Tyler, the 10th President of the United States. He is going to be sworn into presidency after William Henry Harrison, our 9th president, is going to die of pneumonia about 40 days into his presidency. So John Tyler was his vice president and was then later moved into office. Now, John Tyler had a terrible, awful, horrid presidency. He got nothing done, could get nothing accomplished, except one thing, which was his biggest and ultimate goal. Before he leaves office in 1845, he is going to sign into law the annexation of Texas. And with this is going to start the Mexican-American War. And we are going to have a new president, which you should be seeing on the screen right now. This is going to be James K. Polk, or as I like to describe him, Andrew Jackson Jr. So Texas has been annexed into the United States. We now have Texas as a state within the Union. James K. Polk is going to step it up and go one step further in the term of expansion, and he's going to offer Mexico $30 million for the New Mexico territory. In order to further that westward expansion of the New Mexico territory, I'm going to put up a map here in a second, is going to cover, obviously, New Mexico, a little bit of Nevada, and Arizona. So it's in the further name of expansion, but Mexico is going to say no. They're not going to do it because, one, they don't even recognize that Texas is no longer a part of Mexico. General Santa Anna signed what is called the Treaty of Velasco, which recognizes Texas as a republic and its own separate country, and also establishes the border of Mexico and the new Republic of Texas as the Rio Grande River. Now, he signed these documents while he was being held prisoner and, honestly, let's be real, likely tortured. So it was coerced. It was forced out of him. He was forced to sign them. So the Mexican government does not recognize that these are actually legitimate. And because of that, they're going to become very angry with the United States in terms of annexing Texas because they believe Texas is theirs into their own country. And this is going to lead to some breakdown between the two countries, and it's going to go even further when, once annexed, the United States is going to view the border of Mexico as the Rio Grande River, while Mexico is going to view it as much farther, and there's going to be this disputed area on the map that is going to be the cause of a lot of the problems between the two countries. Okay, so what you should be seeing here is a map of the United States, specifically that southern portion. If you can see the shaded area, that is going to be the disputed area between Mexico and the United States after the annexation of the Republic of Texas into the Union. Now, this disputed area is going to become a problem because James K. Polk thinks that the Rio Grande, which is the bottom of that area, is going to be the boundary of Texas between the United States and Mexico, whereas Mexico is going to believe it is the Nueces River, which is that one that is a little bit deeper up into what we now know as Texas, as the boundary. So what's going to happen is Mexico is going to send its military up to the Nueces River to try to maintain control of that area, and James K. Polk is going to see this as an act of war and issue to Congress the need to declare war against Mexico. Now, this upstart congressman is going to come in and demand something called a spot resolution, basically saying, show me where they provoked, show me where they came in and tried to attack and tried to take over American soil before we provide you with a declaration of war. And this guy he's going to be pretty important. His name's Abraham Lincoln, and this is kind of his introduction into huge mainstream politics. Either way, Polk is going to eventually get his spot resolution and create this atmosphere of attack, and he's going to move General Zachary Taylor down to the Rio Grande River to establish that border. And from there, it's going to be a waterfall effect over the next 2 years where the United States forces are going to push their way deeper and deeper into Mexico and eventually end the war. And the war itself is going to expand the country by about 66%. I'm going to pull up a graphic here in a second that's going to kind of show all of the new territory that the United States is going to gain from the war. The fighting of the war itself it's significant in a sense of military history, in a sense of we fought this battle, we fought this war with Mexico. But in terms of what we're studying, what the United States gains from this conflict is by far the most important aspect. All right, so what we should be looking at now is a map of the United States. Now, with the conclusion of the Mexican-American War and the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, we're going to receive that lovely pink section on this map that is the Mexican cession. It's going to give us Utah, Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, and California. Then along with the treaty we had signed 2 years earlier with the British to kind of establish the Canadian border, we're going to get Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And if you can't tell, the map's complete. We own all of that land that we own today. And that's what's going to be one of the biggest impacts of this entire process in fighting this war is we're going to now establish the rest of the United States. Boom. Here we are. The map's complete. We have the entire continental United States. Throughout the actions of those relatively short 10 to 15 year period between 36 and 45, we have added 66% to our country. We have outgrown the Louisiana Purchase, and we have now expanded and own all the things and all the stuff between the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Now, why does it matter? Well, it matters because there's this very big conflict on the horizon. It's called the Civil War. And now we have all of this space for American settlers to move westward into, and with them they're going to bring their culture, their customs, just like people do today as we move from place to place across this country. We have this intermingling and mixing of culture and all of this stuff. So the biggest hot button issue is slavery. If you remember, the Missouri Compromise said if we add a state that is a slave state, we must add a free state to maintain that power balance in Congress. Well, now we're going to have Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, all of these new states that are going to come into the Union, and we're going to have to figure out what to do with slavery because slavery is becoming highly unpopular across the northern states, yet highly relied upon in the South. So by adding all this territory and allowing all this movement, we have further exacerbated in the country the issue of slavery. And how are we going to handle slavery? Because the Americans, we don't like to deal with slavery. We didn't put it in the Constitution. We signed the Compromise of 1821 to push back the issue. We keep pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back. And with the signing of Texas and the Mexican Cession and all of this, completing this territory and this new westward expansion, we're going to run into a point in history where we can no longer outrun this question. I hope you guys enjoyed my video. If you have any questions, just let me know. And have a good day.